Most people talk about leadership like it's theory. I've lived it in the mud, the chaos, and the moments nobody writes about. This show is the truth, raw, unfiltered, and built for leaders who actually give a damn. If you're ready to grow, ready to own your own story, and ready to lead from the front, you're in the right place. Speak up, show up, lead. Let's get into it. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Speak Up, Show Up, Lead Leadership Live Edition. And I'm here. I'm JJ Hardy, and I'm here with my co-host Chris Pienkowski. How you doing today, Chris?
Doing great, JJ. How are you?
Doing excellent. And I'm kind of excited because, we've been having a lot of conversations about stuff. And last time we went live, we had quite a few people participate. And we were going to do one topic this week, and we actually changed it afterwards because we thought something would be more relevant. And with us talking about, all the things related to when to show up, let's talk about when to develop and when to fire. It's that fine line of, that when you're hurting your culture and when you can actually develop somebody and make them a better employee. So what are your opinions on that?
Yeah, people do talk about the, hire slow, fire fast. And a lot of that does have to do with how someone fits into your cultures, right? The deliberate nature of hiring, being slow about it, making sure you're really vetting this person. But then not wasting time if they prove you wrong that you may have made a bad hire. But there are so many ripple effects that happen throughout the organization from having the wrong person. And on the same hand, there are a lot of benefits to developing the right person. So that is a fine line. And sometimes it's a gut, and sometimes it's based on fact and performance and other things. So we're going to be getting into it this morning.
Absolutely. I like that you said that it does affect culture, but it's also, you might need to develop. But, my opinion is sometimes it depends on how long somebody has been at the company and getting that social proof with how they interact with your organization. Yeah. And when I think of trying to figure out when to develop somebody and when to fire them, if somebody just started and they're already starting to cause problems, you're less likely to want to go deep into developing. If they've done at least their 90 days, they've started building the rapport with all the employees, you've seen signs that they're doing okay, but there are just certain things that they're not getting. Maybe it's their first time that they've had something that could be considered misconduct or whatever the case may be. I think that there's definitely some opportunities to developing that person to a certain extent. If they've been there for a long time, on the other hand, and they've done a lot of really good things, I'm a firm believer, and I know you are as well. We've talked about this in the past. I'm a firm believer that you teach, coach, mentor. You make sure you put them through the gamut to make sure that it's time for them to go, rather than just, throwing them right out the door, because you want to make sure that it's not just situational, in their personal life coming into work or something like that you can't help them with, or could be any number of things. We'd have to come up with a specific example, but that's kind of where my mind goes with all this.
Absolutely. If someone's been around for a while, they've got a track record of performance. They've got a track record of being a fit with your core values, and they match your culture. They have relationships with their peers and other people in the organization. That's really when you, as a leader, if something happens, right? It's like, oh man, I noticed like Joe's been not himself lately, or work is slipping. Like, that's when the conversation is really needed to say, "Hey, how you doing? Like, I've noticed these things." Uh, that's I don't think that's the case of being quick to fire because at that point, if you do that, like, do you really care about your people? Um, I
Yeah.
believe that you should definitely care about your people and what's going on with them. And if you've got a 5-year, 10-year employee, dude, it's going to be way better to have that conversation. You have no idea what's going on outside of the workplace. Um, but yeah, like first 90 days, 120 days, that's when the real person starts to show up. The first 90, that's like the honeymoon period. So, you know, everyone's on their best behavior and you're trying your best. And I mean, I've seen people who don't even make it to 90
Yep.
because you hire them and like right out of the gate, it's like that's a dud right there. And you just need to lick your wounds. I made a mistake by hiring this person. I need to show them the door, and I need to get back to maybe some of the other candidates I was looking at.
Yeah. You know, it's a little bit different when you're on active duty, but I have a kind of a real world example with this. And I was still able to push him on to another team. But when there was this time where my team was struggling a little bit. We just had an overload of work, and I was looking to bring somebody on temporarily, just as a tasking from another unit to work with my team for a little while to make sure we were caught up on things and anyway to help us out. We went through a few conversations. A few other first sergeants came over and they brought us some people to talk to see if they would be a good fit for the culture that I built up on my little team right there. And it was only a team of four. So I mean, it wasn't like we had a huge team, but we were in a staff section. That's a lot of people to have under your charge. And
Mhm.
one guy came up, said all the right things. He did so great. And within a week after I brought him onto the team, he started setting up appointments and not showing up. And he was a leader. Not a leader. He was in a leadership position in his own organization. He was a sergeant. So, you know, he started doing all the wrong things. And make a long story short, I ended up processing him for non-judicial punishment because he was missing the mark on almost everything. And he was one of those ones who started showing his true colors within a couple of weeks. But I mean, to the point though, the reason I'm bringing this up is that you don't know. Sometimes you can have the best interviews. You may have a really tough time trying to figure out which one out of 20 people to pick because you just had so many great interviews, and one person may stick out well above others. But it's just like buying a used car. I hate to equate people to cars, but I mean, it really is kind of like buying a used car. You never know what they've been doing up to that point. I mean, they can say all the right things, they can have all the right things on their resume and all that other stuff, but when they show up and they start, and that's where the actual proof shows up. And so
Mhm.
I know we tapped on this last time, but culture is so important. If somebody comes into your team or your organization and they are not a good culture fit, that's one indicator that it's probably time for them to go. If they're not doing the things that they're supposed to be doing, in this case, setting up inspections and meetings and stuff like that, and then not showing up for them. And these are not small ones. Some of these would be for convoys that we had 30 vehicles rolling out the gate, and he had to go do a pre-inspection before they could roll out, and just stuff like that. And we had to let him go because if you're if you're not making the mark on performance, and you're not making the mark on, personality stuff, if you're saying one thing and always doing another, that's not going to work out for you. And why is it important for a culture fit for somebody to be let go as fast as possible when that happens? Well, just imagine if you allow somebody to stay on your team, and it's not as easy to let them go when you're in the military and push them onto another team, but in the civilian world, you can definitely do that. And getting rid of them means that you're telling people that this is something that can't happen on our team. If you keep them there, I mean, just imagine if you just allowed somebody to set up meetings and then not show up for them, set up inspections and not be present for those inspections, say one thing to the boss and then not do those things, and other people start noticing that that person's doing that stuff, and they just get to continue to be there. No
So
punishment, no nothing. That's gonna cause a ripple effect that causes nothing but negative stuff to start spreading on the team.
what I hear you saying right now
Oh boy.
is I hear you saying that by keeping the wrong person around, you are lowering the standard for that person. Now the rest of the team is like, oh, guess we
That's
got new
all I have.
standards around here, boys. And they're
That's all I have to do.
that's right. When it's really our job as leaders to maintain that standard, to set it, to maintain it, and to challenge it. Like, you know what? We're going to take this standard from here to here now. But yeah, by keeping the wrong person around, you're sending the message that I'm willing to lower the standard for Joe Snuffy.
Yes. Yeah. And that also shows that if you haven't allowed that in the past, that also shows that you're willing to give favoritism to a specific person for whatever reason, whether you're intentionally doing it or not. You can't allow all kinds of negative behavior. Now, on the other side of that, say that person did a really good job for a long time, 3 months, 6 months, 8 months, a year, and they had some things show up that they could be considered misconduct, but it was outside of their normal character. For example, maybe that same person for the very first time was late to an inspection. You got a call from him 5 minutes after it was supposed to happen, and you had to go cover down for him. Sure, you're absolutely going to get upset, but in that situation, because he has half a year, whatever the case may be, of nothing but positive things, it raises more questions than it does bring the comment up that you need to throw this person back out, to the workforce. You actually want to find out more about what's going on. And that's when you dig into it. If it's a skill thing and they're falling short on, maybe it's the first time they've done a thing, they've caught up with some of the other computer systems you use, but this one time for some reason they didn't do so well. That's another situation where you prompt like the teach, coach, mentor model, where you sit there with them, you teach them a little bit about it, you come back and check in on them to make sure you're coaching them on how to do that if they have any questions, and then kind of keeping your distance, but letting them come to you with questions and letting them know you're still there, but you're not going to be in their business with it, because you want them to get what they got, whatever the case may be. That can apply to a lot of different things, but in my opinion, those are the two types of situations where instead of going straight to firing, you go into more of a leading type situation where you're trying to figure out what's going on and how you can help that person out.
Yeah. You always have to make a call about how you're going to move forward. For a second, when I heard you say misconduct, I was thinking, like, what exactly are we defining as misconduct? Because You could have an employee who's been with an organization for 10 years who has been doing fantastic. They've been a culture fit. But then maybe you have a, a Christmas party, right? And that particular person has been drinking, and he or she does something that is completely wrong. I mean, that's probably a level of misconduct where you're like, you know what? You broke some major rules here, whether or not they were written, but like, right or wrong, you did wrong.
Right.
And we can't have you around here anymore.
Right. No, there are definitely levels to misconduct. There are, there are procedural things that, they may slip up on. When the example that I gave, what comes to mind first is if they're having a personal situation and they start showing up late to work a couple times, maybe missing the mark on something that they're doing at the office, which isn't typical. Personal situations can do that to a person. You got to be, you can't expect people to be a robot. They're actually still people. So addressing it that way, but there are things like fighting at work, physically fighting, not getting into a verbal confrontation, but physically fighting, being inappropriate. Maybe there's some sexual misconduct, or just saying inappropriate things that shouldn't be said to another individual there. There are definitely levels to misconduct, and there are certain things that are not acceptable, which could be we need to talk about this to see what's going on in your life. But then the next level could be, hey, we need to talk about this because this is probably going to be your one and only warning. And then there are some things where it's like, you've been a good guy or gal for a long time, but this just absolutely cannot happen. I'm sorry, we got to let you go.
That's right. Yep. Yeah. No warnings. Like, should have known better.
Yes.
And
well, they force your hand. I mean, especially if you're in a company that's big enough to have an HR department. Do you think there are certain things that just via policy or ethics, that's why you go through, in a lot of larger companies, that's why you go through ethics training. That's why you sign a policy. It's because there are just certain things that are not acceptable. And and it's important to make sure you can't always hold a hard line, but there are some times where you have to.
Yeah. But then, I just moved my table. So what we're talking about today is develop versus fire.
Yeah.
And it seems like we've been skewing on the side of like letting people go. Maybe you and I just woke up on that side of the bed where we're looking to kill people today. I don't know. But when are the times, in your opinion, where it's like, all right, we need to develop this person? Because I'm a firm believer that you can develop skills, but you can't develop character. Character is what helps you to match a culture of an organization. If you're just a bad person or you just have different values, so I'll retract that last statement. Just because you have different values than the people at an organization doesn't necessarily make you a bad person.
No.
It just means that you're not a fit within this organization.
Right.
And you can't teach those values. So on the other hand, skills, right? Skills are learnable. You can like, oh, okay, I see that you're slipping here and you need to be better at Excel, whatever. Pick a skill. Where does that line cross to development versus like, now it's just not, you're not the person for here?
Yeah. So I started going into it a little bit, maybe 5-10 minutes ago, but if they're not proficient in something, but they normally do a really good job, that's a good indicator. That's why I brought up the teach, coach, mentor model. But there is a point where, teaching them and coaching them and mentoring, you can only do that so much. I'm a firm believer that if it's a skill issue, you should exhaust what you can to do your best for somebody, especially if they're a good culture fit for your organization.
Mhm.
And I really think that culture thing is important to always consider. If somebody is a manager or higher within your organization, and they normally do a really, really good job at leading people, but they're making some procedural errors, that's another situation where you adopt that teach, coach, mentor model. If they're not a good manager, if they've shown a lot of things that go against your organization's values, and they're not, passing the messages that they're supposed to be passing, and when a new initiative pops off, they always miss the mark, or whatever the case may be. There could be some stuff there that you might have to weigh whether or not it's worth developing or not. But good leadership, managers that practice good leadership typically are always worth keeping around, just because that's a really tough thing to get good at. So,
Mhm.
if but if they're not, and they're missing the mark on a lot of things, then that could be an indicator that it's time for them to go. As
Yeah.
far as a ground level employee, though, if their job is to operate a forklift and they start hitting stuff on a regular basis, well, they're probably you could try to develop them a little bit, but they're probably just not a very good forklift driver.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, it just all depends on the situation, the job, and all that other stuff. But I think, generally speaking, if somebody shows good character for an extended amount of time, and then all of a sudden they start faltering on a couple of things, that's when it's time to develop rather than let go.
Yeah, yeah, you walk out into the parking lot and you notice a bunch of dings on the new forklift driver's car, and you're like, "Oh, dude, maybe I should have looked at what they drive before I hired them for this."
Yeah, no kidding. What do you think? Do you have anything to add to that, Chris? Or
No, you summed it up pretty well. Like, there are definitely some black and white, and then there's some gray areas to it, and that's, you know what? That is just leadership.
yes,
Some leadership is black and white, some of it's gray, a lot of it's gray. Um,
most of it.
but no, I don't think I'd add anything more to what you just said.
Okay. Yeah, and it may seem like that most of this conversation we were saying that you got to get rid of people, just get rid of people, get rid of people. But really, I think we can both honestly say in our past experience that is not something that we practice unless we have to. New employees, they either sink or swim, and that's why a lot of jobs have a probationary period, right?
Mhm.
But once that's up, it is I mean, it's expensive to retrain. If you're going to fire somebody and hire somebody else new, you're exhausting an absorbent amount of resources, and so most times it's worth at least giving the thought to develop rather than fire. But
Yeah.
you have to look at the other side of that coin. There are definitely situations where you know it might be worth it to find somebody else. So there's a lot of balance here, and leadership is one of those things where when you're in a management position or higher, so many situations are coming at you. I mean, that's why normally my wife gave me a different cup the other day, but normally I'm drinking out of one that says you're a shit show supervisor, because that's kind of what it feels like when you're in a management position. It seems like there are constant fires, and you're just riding around on some ugly tricycle trying to figure it all out. It's the worst circus in the entire world. So, I
Mhm.
mean, it's just one of those things. You just got to figure it out. You got to make decisions. You just have to always try to do the right thing.
And, what I'll say there too is once the decision is made, just do it. Like, don't prolong it. Um, it really is like ripping off a band-aid.
Yeah.
If you've decided, or if you've given that person, these are your chances. Hey, I've had the conversation with you, I've put it in writing. And if you're if you're a 3 strikes and out kind of person, man, just do it, because every single day that you don't, you're going to be watching your people, and they're like, why is Joe Snuffy still here? This dude keeps screwing up. Why hasn't my boss just let him go? So again, that comes back to lowering the standards, but it's also for your own state of mind. Like, I went through this, years ago. I knew I needed to fire someone. I was justifying why I wasn't firing them. And but I knew, like, at the end of this month, it's going to happen. Stop with the end of the month, or I'm going to wait another week. Like, because now you're creating a scenario that I call dead man walking, where that person's days are numbered, but you've got to almost walk on eggshells. You're not talking to people about it. Whereas, just, pull them into your office, do it where you need to do it, get HR involved, and let them go. You'll feel better about it. The rest of your team, I have let people go, and then had people talk to me later on and say, like, man, it is so nice around here without so and so. So you're doing a lot of people a favor when you fire the people that need to be fired. And don't wait on it. Don't sleep on that. Just, like, rip off the Band-Aid and let it go.
Yeah, agreed.
There's a human element, right? I'm not saying to be harsh, but you can't keep people around that are dragging down the rest of the organization.
Well, no, and that's just I guess I don't really consider it a principle, but it's important to be decisive. I mean, if
it's a leadership trait,
it is a leadership trait, yes. But when you are that type of person that is willing to drag on letting somebody go, likely that bleeds into other areas of your leadership.
Yeah.
If you got to do something and you're just constantly weighing out everything and then weighing it out again and then weighing it out again and then weighing it out again, it's just a revolving door of you coming to the same conclusion. Just make the decision and hold to it. People will respect that when they see that in your organization a heck of a lot more than somebody who just, plays Ring Around the Rosie every day. I mean, you really just have to make that decision. And that's not just about letting somebody go or deciding to develop somebody and sticking to a path of development that you laid out, because that's part of it too. When you develop somebody, you don't just decide to develop them. You have to actually come up with a plan and then stick to that plan. It's almost like a coaching program. So, right. But you got to do it. You can't say we're going to start the coaching program tomorrow, or we're going to start, this training program for you tomorrow, or we're going to fire you tomorrow, and then never do it. I mean, that's just one of those things that is going to bleed into every area of your work. And so you got to button that up and not do that.
Yeah. And you know what? And I know that we're about on time, but if you've gotten to the point with an employee where you've got to let them go and you've followed all the steps, right? You've had the conversations, you've done all that stuff. You're sending a mixed message to them if you don't let them go. Because now they're thinking, man, I've improved. I've done the things that I was told I needed to improve. Otherwise, I was being fired. Haven't been fired yet. So now they start thinking that they're better than they are. And then when you finally do, like, unweenie yourself and, step up and do the firing, it almost takes them by surprise. Like, oh, man, I thought I was in the clear. Oh, yeah. Sorry. I just don't have a spine, and it took me a little while to do this.
It does give that perception. And by the way, them staying there, if they could also be the type of person that would look at that as, oh, I can do whatever I want.
That too.
And you can't let that happen either. That's both right. Of those situations are not good. You don't want to give somebody some false perception. I always say that you should communicate consistently and often, because communication is what makes organizations successful, but it also kills organizations when you don't communicate enough.
Yep.
So
Exactly.
both of those things are detrimental. So, Chris, next time we talk, I believe we're going into the AAR.
Yes.
So I'm excited about that.
Mhm.
Just a snippet in case you haven't watched any of our past episodes, because we've kind of tapped into the subject a few different times without actually going into it. An AAR is a way to analyze what's going right and what's going wrong. And we'll dig into that in a couple of weeks. If that interests you, make sure you subscribe, you follow, whatever the case may be, so that you can see that conversation. But I really think that I think it's going to be a good one. The military taught me the AAR process, and I'm not sure where Chris learned it, but maybe we can talk about that too. But it's something that works really well, and it helps me figure out what I'm doing right and doing wrong, because you don't have to just do it for you're at the office. You can do it for yourself too.
That's right.
Do you have any closing comments before we end this conversation today, Chris?
Yeah, my closing comment is be brave. If you need to do something, and part of being a leader is doing the things that you don't want to do. In this case, on today's topic, it's about firing someone. If you need to fire someone, you need to just be brave and do it. Stop putting it off. More than just you will benefit from it. So get to it.
Yes. And my only closing comment is going to be, because we spent a lot of time today talking about when to fire. Also keep in mind that it is important to develop people. If they've been there for a while, give them a chance, unless they're doing something crazy. And I'm not going to define that crazy has a lot of faces.
Mhm.
But if there's an opportunity to develop somebody rather than fire them, if somebody knows your organization already, understands how to do the job, understands how your organization works, it's going to be really difficult to train that into somebody else. So make sure you're giving that person a chance, in that you're giving them a little bit of professional development, teaching, coaching, and mentoring before you let them go.
Yes.
And that's, fire fast though, if you have to.
That's right.
Dragging anything on is not good.
No
All right.
bueno.
All right, y'all. Thank you all for tuning in. As I said, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, do all the things. But this is an interactive show. We didn't have nearly as much interaction today as we didn't have any interaction today, except for Steve-O up there saying good podcast, which we appreciate that.
Yep.
But make sure you're leaving a comment below so we understand what you all want to hear, because we all live in a different lane. So we got to know what the audience wants so that we can cater our conversations to that, because our experience isn't here for us to hear ourselves flapping jaws every day. It's here to help you all. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you all in a couple of weeks to talk about the AAR.
Yep. Let's go. Have a great day.